Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye is at the Brown County Library interviewing candidates in the 2014 elections. We're interviewing Mr. Ron Gruett of Chilton. He's a Democrat running in the 8th Congressional District. Ron, welcome back to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you for having me.
Programming note, Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. Ron, I'm just so curious about something you say on your website, and I'd ask you to explain it. You say you consider yourself an expert on the middle class. That's an intriguing, fascinating comment. Put it in context for us, please.
Well, it's really quite simple. I live in the middle class. My parents were middle class. All my kids are middle class. I live a middle class lifestyle. I live in a 3-bedroom ranch house with a 6-year-old car and a 12-year-old car. I don't think you can get any more middle class than that.
Tell us a little bit more about your background. You've taught, but go ahead, tell us your...
My background is I taught high school for 33 years, and I've been teaching at Marian University. I've been teaching organic chemistry to mostly nursing students. And I've done that, I think, for about 5 years, and I really enjoy it.
Okay, and you ran for the Assembly once a few years ago,
yes.
And now you're upping the ante, running for Congress. Is there any one issue or set of issues that you decided to run for a much larger district?
I think the big thing is the gridlock in Congress, and the fact that middle class are being attacked, I feel. Obviously, a lot of other people don't feel that way, but the middle class is declining, and being an expert on the middle class, I wanted to see if I could do something for us.
What are some ways that you can think of to help the middle class, please, Ron?
Well, first of all, one of my big issues is Social Security. People that are middle class need Social Security.
And it's on track to go bankrupt here in about 25 years. Excuse me for interrupting.
Yeah, but I think, like Mr. Ribble has voted to actually decrease Social Security twice to save it. I don't think that's the way to save it. My fix for that would be to increase the amount of earnings that's susceptible to Social Security taxes. I would raise it from 107, I think it is, up to $250,000.
250.
I just suggested that to Ron Johnson at a town hall in Chilton, and he said it wouldn't be fair to the people that are well off to raise it up that high.
And your answer?
My dad died at 59 years of age, and he never got a penny out of Social Security, so I'm really not grieving for the people that make $250,000. I paid on every penny I made my whole life. When I had 3 kids in school and they were eligible for reduced lunch, I paid on every penny I made, and I don't see why people that make $250,000 can't pay on every penny they make too.
Also scheduled to go bankrupt, although not for a couple decades, is Medicare. How would you fix that, sir?
Well, I think Medicare is extremely valuable. One thing I would do is Medicare Part D, that pays for drugs. I would make them get bids on drugs rather than having to take the retail price for drugs. It would save at least 10% of cost of Medicare Part D. The VA does it, Medicaid does it, and it was just something that was put into the Medicare Part D at the very last minute, there's no reason it could come out except the pharmaceutical companies are very, very influential in Washington. I would also change the way we bill. For instance, rather than billing for each procedure, bill for each illness and pay the doctor to fix that, and whatever the doctor or doctors feel is necessary, it would all come out of what the procedure is designated to get. It would save money, and I think it would make the doctors, it would satisfy the doctors.
You mentioned Medicaid. Paul Ryan recently came out with a plan to block grant Medicaid to the states. Have you thought about that? Do you have a position on that?
I don't like the idea of block granting it because that puts automatic limits on it. You know, depending on who your governor is, like in Wisconsin, Scott Walker, I'm sure he'd find a way to make sure that some of that money got into the hands of the very well off. So I don't think block granting is a good idea.
As you alluded to earlier, Congress has an approval rating of between 8 and 15%. How would you try to raise the image of Congress, Ron?
Well, first of all, I would fight for the middle class. You know, most of the voters are middle class, and maybe they're seeing that most of the legislation is beneficial to the very well off. The top 1% makes 60% of all of the income in the United States, and every bill that gets passed seems to up the ante a little bit. According to the last thing I heard, in the last 10 years, 90% of the increase in income went to the top 1%. So we have to find a way to make it more fair to the middle class. And I guess the problem is that the Congress is funded by millionaires. The majority of congressmen are millionaires. The majority of the donations come from millionaires, and it's not a big mystery that the laws that are passed are very beneficial to people that are well off.
So you would make some of the wealthiest among us pay more in income taxes, correct?
Well, more in Social Security taxes,
okay,
number
that's
one.
Right,
and I don't think it would be unfair to ask more of the very well off, because almost all of the tax decreases under President Bush and under President Obama have gone disproportionately to the well off. So if we need more money, that would be one way to get it.
Last year there was discussion of the definition of well off as those making more than $250,000. Do you think that's a good starting point?
I do. I think that's pretty fair. I know that depending on where you live, like my son lives in Manhattan, and his rent is $2,650 a month, where in Chilton, where I live, the same place would go for about $250 a month. It's only 600 square feet. It's a dinky little apartment. But
10 times.
10
disparity?
times, yeah.
10 times.
Yeah, so it depends where you are, I guess. But I think at $250,000, anybody could do quite well.
The Obama administration is discussing how to prevent companies from reorganizing under foreign laws and paying lower taxes. It's called inversion. Would you be in favor of stopping that practice?
I absolutely would. As a matter of fact, on the way here, I just heard on public radio that they're working on ways right now to prevent that from happening. Maybe one way to do it would be to make the tax code more fair. 25% of corporations don't pay any taxes at all. And I should qualify that. 25% of profitable corporations don't pay any tax at all. So maybe if we made everybody pay some, those people that are leaving because they're paying too much could pay less. I think that's a good idea.
What do you think has been the impact of the Affordable Care Act on the state of Wisconsin, Ron?
Not as much as it could have been, because of our governor, for instance, not taking the $1 billion each year to help pay for our Badger care. I think it has a good effect. On average, it has lowered the increase in cost of medical procedures and going to the hospital. So I think it's had a positive effect. For instance, I am allowed to buy insurance through my former employer, and it costs $1,200 a month. And I hear people on Republican talk shows say that they were getting wonderful health care for $200 a month. And I just feel that maybe either the Board of Education that picks our insurers are really stupid, or somebody's not telling the truth, or not very accurate. I would imagine any health insurance is great. It's wonderful. The cheaper it is, the better, until you have to use it and it's not there.
Senator Baldwin has said that the ultimate solution is a single-payer system. Do you agree with that, sir?
I absolutely agree with that. Every advanced country in the world has it. It works well. You hear all kinds of horror stories from people who want to detract from them. But my wife and I travel a lot, and no matter where the people we meet, we ask them, how do you like your health care? And their first answer almost is, better than yours. But I was just talking to a friend today. His son is an expatriate. He lives in England, loves the health care there. Nobody goes bankrupt in England from health care. Nobody goes bankrupt in Canada from health care. In the United States, it's the ¡1 reason for bankruptcy.
How soon should we get to single payer? As soon as possible?
As soon as possible.
Okay.
But I don't see it happening because we have, again, too many lobbyists on K Street that are putting a whole lot of money into campaigns. I might add, I didn't get any.
You didn't get any?
No, I didn't get a
Recently, Congress put a Band-Aid over the issue of long-term funding of our highway fund. You know, they adopted a pension smoothing, which will only work for a few months. A larger issue is, how would you pay for a more comprehensive long-range highway funding plan?
You know, I consider the gasoline tax a user fee, and if the user fee isn't covering the cost, raise the user fee. I believe a nickel would be enough. I heard that on public radio today too, and a nickel would really help a lot. We've got, I think it's over 25% of our bridges are considered unsafe. 70% of our roads are considered less than good. Our infrastructure is falling apart, and it's all because we're postponing what we have to do. I'm on the city council in Chilton, and we have everything on a rotating basis. When a street gets to a certain age, we repave it. If the pipes underneath the street are more than the acceptable age, they get replaced. And if you do that on a regular basis, things work out great. But what we've been doing is postponing. And as far as the smoothing, I didn't know what that was, so I looked it up. And
so did I.
And they called it a gimmick. And I think of it as a gimmick. I think what will happen eventually is the people whose pension funds this money doesn't go into right away eventually won't get it at all. And I just don't think it's a very good idea. Why don't we pay our way?
What provisions would you push for in a immigration reform law?
One thing we might do is, the Republicans say they'd like to do it one step at a time. Well, let's pick out some things that everybody agrees on and do that. But as far as the DREAM Act, I'm all for that. As far as allowing kids that have been here since they were 4, 5, 6 years old and gone to school here and don't even know how to speak Spanish, sending them back to Mexico or the Middle America, that would be just heartless and overall not making no sense at all.
What about the 57,000 kids that recently crossed the border within the last 3 months?
I think we have no choice but to send them back if we can find their parents, because when they started coming and it was working, they came in larger and larger and larger numbers. I just heard that there are, in some places on the border, there are 14 border agents per mile. Can you imagine if you were driving down the highway in Wisconsin and there were 14 patrol cars, how ridiculous you think that would be? Some places there are only 7. But the answer isn't to this whole problem isn't to have more border agents and more deterrence at the border. The answer is right here. If people are hiring illegals, they should pay a price for that.
The 10 to 12 million adults who are here illegally, should they be given a path to amnesty?
If I say amnesty, I'm going to be jumped all over. Should they be have a path to citizenship?
Thank you.
Yeah, right. I say yes. If they've been here a long time and they've been good citizens and they own houses, and I think we can we can. If they've been here long enough, their children are all American citizens. I don't like the idea of amnesty. Like, once you make it here, you're in, and that's okay, because then we become a lawless society. But I do believe that people that have been here a long time and have been good citizens, they should be allowed to stay here.
Should they have to pay a price? Should they have to pay a fee? Should they have to learn English?
To me, it seems, what are you charging them for? Why would you charge somebody that's living here 20 years? How much would be enough? $1,000? $10,000? I don't believe in that. I do think that if they have proven that they are good citizens and they want to go through after that all of the other steps to get their citizenship, I don't, maybe charge them a fee for what it costs to do all the testing. But
within the last 18 months, we have, as Americans, have learned a lot about the information collection practices of the National Security Administration. Do you think NSA broke the law?
I think they probably did. I think the cure would be to have better oversight. I think people just get wrapped up in that. And for one thing, I believe we have a FISA court, and maybe they should use it. Before you spy on an American citizen, you should go to court and get a judge's opinion that it's okay. I think what's been happening is if they feel, if some underling feels like this is a possible problem, they have the authority to just tap phones and so on. I don't think that's right.
Okay.
But I do think we have to have a good security in the United States to prevent another 9/11.
Let's talk about campaign finance issues. You're going against an incumbent after Citizens United and the McCutcheon ruling and third-party groups spending hundreds of millions of dollars. I guess my question is this. Some want a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. What's your feeling?
I absolutely believe in that. I think that it's ridiculous to call corporations people. And when all of the refinance or the finance law started out, our Republican friends said the key to unlimited donations is the light of day. If we know who's giving the money, that would be fine. Well, it turns out now we have PACs, and you don't know who's putting the money in there. There is no reporting on who does it. So I think, I don't think that corporations are people, and I don't know how the Supreme Court ever came to that decision, but I would certainly move to amend.
How's your own campaign finance practices going? Are you having any luck raising money against an incumbent?
It's all relative. Mr. Ribble started out with $1 million. I started out with $0. When you look at the donations that Mr. Ribble gets, they're $20,000 and $10,000 and $10,000 like that. I did get a $500 donation. That's the biggest one I've gotten from an individual. I've not gotten any money from any PACs. I have gotten money from county parties in the 8th CD. So I wish I had a lot more money. I'll tell you one thing. One thing that's really hurt the Democratic Party is the dissolution of the falling apart of the unions, the public unions. I went to one of the teachers' unions and I suggested that I could use some money, and they said, well, we used to have 20-some people working in the office, now we're down to 4. Four, and there's not a lot of money to go around because a lot of teachers aren't unionized anymore, and paying their union dues is optional. I've talked with AFSCME, and in the state, the governor's rulings have hurt them also. So as far as I need lots more money. The only way I can get my message across that, for instance, that I would never cut Social Security, I would never cut Medicare, is to advertise on TV. And the only way to advertise on TV is to have money. And I don't have enough. I need lots more. So
then, not being able to compete financially, How are you forced to campaign then?
Grassroots. I do a lot of traveling. I've visited every county at least 3 times, some of them more. I was in, I think, 12 parades. I've been to all the county fairs, door to door. Any chance anybody will listen to me at all, I will show up. I have not turned down one invitation yet. Tomorrow I have 2 invitations, one to speak to the letter carriers and another one to speak to the Labor Council in Green Bay. So, and I have to work all day besides that at my real job.
Wow. Let's talk about foreign affairs a bit. With all that is roiling in the world right now with Iraq and Syria, Israel, Palestine, and the Ukraine, what lessons have you taken away from when we should commit American soldiers to a foreign?
Well, I just feel the first big mistake started by sending troops into Iraq in the first place. I think that was a mistake. There was no yellow cake there. There was no big problem. And that opened up a hornet's nest. But all that said, I wish the president would be a little bit more aggressive, if nothing else, in his tone. You know, not this laid back, we'll see what happens thing. When you see 2 Americans get their head cut off, it has a visceral response, and you really want to go in there and get things done. But I don't think we can put boots on the ground unless we're attacked by a nation. You declare war on a nation, not an idea. So I don't know if I made myself clear enough there, but it gets me a little riled up.
How should we respond to the threat of ISIS or ISIL, whatever you want to call it?
I think what's going to happen, and I completely agree with it, is there will be a massive air campaign with drones and fighter jets to any chance we get to take out their units. I think that's what we're going to do, and it's dangerous. We could lose planes that way. We could lose pilots, but it's a lot better than putting thousands of men and women on the ground in harm's way.
To do that, we'll have to work in some way with the government of Syria. Are you okay with that?
No.
No?
I'm not. I just assume that I don't think we have to work with the government of Syria. You might say the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and in this case it kind of turns out that way, that ISIS is also trying to overthrow the Syrian government, but I don't think we need to cooperate with the Syrian government. I think we have enough might to just go in there and do it ourselves.
You think ISIS poses a direct threat to the United States?
Well, I heard something this morning that made sense to me. The people that attacked us on 9/11 didn't seem like they had the ability to cause the damage that they caused, and we found out the hard way. So I guess they do have the ability to cause harm right in the United States, especially when we realize that a lot of the ISIS fighters are American citizens with American passports, British citizens with British passports. They can come right back, act normal, and then cause problems. So, yeah.
Let's talk about energy policy. 2 questions. Do you support the Keystone Pipeline?
Qualified support. I don't think that it should go over shallow aquifers. If the aquifer is very shallow and you have a leak, you have almost no buffer to protect the groundwater. So even though it would cost millions and millions of more dollars, I would back it if they went around the shallow aquifers, because it is dangerous to have oil going through a pipeline, but it's a lot more dangerous having oil on these trains that are going through, even Wisconsin. They're coming through here hauling oil from out west. So I think the pipeline has to be done, but I don't think it has to go over shallow aquifers.
The carbon emissions, the new carbon emission standards recommended that are in draft form by the Obama administration, do you support those?
I would rather they would trade carbon credits so that those companies that can easily cut their carbon emissions could trade their credits to those that it's not so easy to cut their carbon emissions, and gradually work down to that. Some people suggest that we have global warming going on right now. I completely agree with it. I went to Glacier National Park, and there are no glaciers there anymore. The snows of Kilimanjaro, they're gone. Those are easy ways to tell that we do have global warming. And I think sometimes the other side, because they think it's bad for business to have global warming, they deny it. Well, you can't deny what you can see very easily, and that is that, and also the ice caps are getting smaller. So there's something happening, and warming is what's causing it. I don't know what else you'd call it but global warming.
You ran for the Assembly before. That's just a small part of the 8th Congressional District. So my question is, what new have you learned about the 8th District now that you're running in a much larger area of Wisconsin, sir? Very conservative.
Very conservative. Every county party member that I talk to and all of the county picnics I go to, they say this whole county is very conservative. But Dr. Kagan won, and President Obama won the 8th District, so it is possible for a Democrat to win. It's just not as easy. And I think I have to win with my message. My message is I will not cut Social Security like Mr. Ribble tried to do. And another thing I think that has a positive resonance with the people of the 8th is I'm suggesting lowering student loan rates to less than 1%, to the bank discount rate.
Right.
And that would create billions of dollars that could go into creating jobs and making the economy more vibrant.
Right. You would tie the student loan interest to the rate that banks borrow money?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And, I'm not naive. I know it would cost the federal government money. I know that they wouldn't get all the money back. I know that there are expenses. But right now, the federal government is still spending billions of dollars on student loans. And at the college that I teach at, almost all of the students have the student loans. The tuition there is $32,000 a year. That's crazy. How can you afford that? And a lot of these people are going to go out and be teachers and start at $30,000 a year. It'd be almost impossible to pay that back. At fairs and parades, I talk to people that are in their 30s, mid-30s, and they're still paying 8.5% on their student loans. They don't have them paid off yet. If they got those paid off, they could buy a bigger house, they could buy a new car, they could go on vacation. It would just, I think it would come back threefold in the what happens to the economy, the money the federal government would pay to subsidize this.
Final question, any other differences between you and Congressman Ribble you want to highlight? We've talked about a couple.
Well, I just think the economics, it seems the trickle down is what appeals to Mr. Ribble, and I would give I would put more money in the hands of the middle class, and hopefully it would filter its way up rather than the horse and sparrow approach that the Republicans espouse. So.
Thank you. Ron Gruett of Chilton is the Democratic candidate in the U.S. House District 8 in Wisconsin. The election's November 4. Ron, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.